You've been told that buying a house is the smartest financial decision you'll ever make. In 2026, that might be the most expensive lie of your life. This video is a forensic autopsy of the so-called American dream of home ownership, and why your primary residence is usually a liability disguised as an asset. In this episode, we break down the biology, psychology, and brutal math behind the home ownership trap, from the endowment effect and sunk cost fallacy to 30-year mortgages, maintenance bleed, property taxes, and the opportunity cost of trapping your capital in bricks instead of productive assets like index funds and REITs. You'll see why renting is throwing money away is one of the most dangerous slogans ever sold to the middle class, how status-driven home purchases create dignified poverty, and why true security in 2026 comes from liquidity, mobility, and a fortress balance sheet, not a house with 90% loan-to-value and a leaking roof. What you'll learn in this video: why your primary residence fails the basic definition of an investment, how 30-year mortgages quietly transfer your life's work to the bank, the psychological traps, endowment effect, sunk costs, and status games, the real numbers, housing returns versus the stock market over decades, a rational framework for renting, investing, and protecting your family in 2026. If you've ever felt house poor, chained to a mortgage, or pressured to buy before it's too late, this video is your audit. Are you building a fortress or just decorating your cell? I remember the smell of it, clear as the day I walked through the threshold of my first asset. It wasn't the scent of fresh paint or the promise of new beginnings. No, it was something far more primal, far more honest. It was the smell of damp drywall and the metallic tang of a furnace that was precisely 3 days away from catastrophic failure. The odor clung to my nostrils like a prophecy I refused to hear. I stood in that living room, alone, a young provider, barely 30 years old, feeling the weight of the key in my pocket, a key that suddenly felt less like liberation and more like a shackle forged from compound interest. The real estate agent had already driven away in her pristine BMW, commissions secured, conscience unburdened. I thought I had bought a fortress. I thought I had secured my family's future in the bedrock of the earth itself, in the permanence of property, in the tangibility of a thing I could point to and say, "This is mine." I was catastrophically wrong. I hadn't bought a fortress. I had signed something far more sinister, a 30-year confession, a legally binding admission that I was willing to surrender my mobility, my liquidity, my spontaneity, and my peace of mind for the privilege of painting a wall without asking permission from anyone but the bank. I had traded options for ownership. I had traded flexibility for the psychological comfort of a mortgage statement that told me I was building equity, that beautiful lie that economists love to repeat, especially to those who cannot afford to hear the truth. Look at the person sitting across from you at the dinner table right now. Look at them carefully. If you are the provider, and let's be honest, if you're listening to this, you probably are, their security, their stability, their futures, they rest on your back. They rest on your decisions. And yet society tells us, no, they scream at us from every direction, from every media channel, from every neighbor's dinner party conversation, that the ultimate, final, defining act of protection is to anchor ourselves and our families to a pile of sticks and bricks with a chain forged in the fires of compound interest at 7% per annum. We are told relentlessly that renting is throwing money away, as if paying the bank three times the original value of a house in interest payments over 3 decades is somehow an act of financial genius, as if servicing debt is the same as building wealth, as if paying someone else's mortgage is dignified, while paying your own rent is somehow a moral failure. The year is 2026. The world is moving at the speed of an algorithm, reshaping itself in real time, yet we are still obsessed, with the 1950s dream of a white picket fence and 2.5 children and a golden retriever named Max. A fence that, quite frankly, is rotting from the inside out. We see the headlines blaring across our screens. Housing prices surge to record highs. Equity is your greatest wealth generator. The case for buying now before you're priced out forever. But they don't show you the 2 a.m. panic when the roof leaks and you realize you just spent $8,000 to avoid catastrophic water damage to the attic. They don't show you the property tax bill that arrives like a ransom note every 12 months, inflating with the cruelty of inflation itself. They don't show you the opportunity cost, the ghost, the phantom, the invisible millions of dollars you could have accumulated if that down payment had been working for you in the great engine of human productivity and capital accumulation, the stock market. I am an investigator by trade and by temperament. My job, as I see it, is to audit the lies we tell ourselves to sleep at night. And the biggest lie of all, the one that keeps the middle class in a state of perpetual, dignified poverty, chained to a lifestyle that mimics wealth while delivering servitude, is that your primary residence is an investment. It isn't. It's a liability you happen to sleep in. It's a biological trap designed to trigger your nesting instinct, your ancient fear of homelessness, your primal need for territory, while the bank systematically drains your marrow through a 30-year straw made of interest payments. It's the most elegant financial trap ever constructed, making you believe you're building something when you're actually just making someone else rich. Tonight, we are going to perform a forensic autopsy on the American dream. We are going to peel back the shingles and the siding, the copper gutters and the energy-efficient windows to reveal the structural decay of the residential mathematics underneath. We will look at why Mr. Market is laughing at your kitchen renovation that you're convinced added $50,000 to your home's value, and why the truly intelligent investor knows that a house is not a home. It's a ledger entry. It's accounting dressed up as destiny. And right now, for most of you, for the vast, vast majority, that entry is bleeding red, even if the bank statements say otherwise. This is not opinion. This is mathematics. This is the audit nobody wants you to perform, because a sane person, armed with real data, would make very different choices. Let us discuss the psychology of the cage. Why do we crave it? Why does the intelligent man, and I will assume you are intelligent or you wouldn't be here listening, the provider, the person responsible for keeping others alive, why does he willingly walk into a 30-year debt contract that would make a loan shark blush with admiration? Why do we volunteer for this? It's because we are biological machines, evolved on the savannah for a world that no longer exists, attempting to navigate the securities exchange with the emotional toolkit of our ancestors. We are cavemen with mortgage applications. We are ancient creatures programmed for scarcity and territory, trying to make sense of abundance and abstraction. Our brains are hardwired with what psychologists call the endowment effect. Here's how it works. The moment we step into a space, a house, an apartment, a potential asset, and allow ourselves to imagine our children's heights marked on the doorframe over the years, our rational logic simply dies. It collapses like a faulty foundation. We assign a value to that property that has absolutely nothing to do with its intrinsic worth, its actual cash flows, its mathematical utility, and everything to do with our fragile egos and our deep human need to feel like we've accomplished something. We stand in an empty room and we see our future. We see birthday parties, we see holiday dinners, we see ourselves as owners, which means we see ourselves as successful. Mr. Market, that manic-depressive fellow that Benjamin Graham warned us about, that unpredictable force of irrational exuberance followed by paralyzing fear, he loves homeowners. He loves them because they are the most emotional, the most psychologically invested, the most irrational participants in his entire ecosystem. Homeowners aren't participants in a market, they're participants in a dream. When Mr. Market is euphoric, when he's in his manic phase, he tells you your home has doubled in value. Suddenly you feel rich, you feel wise, you feel like a financial genius, even though you did absolutely nothing but stay in the same place while other people's desperation pushed prices upward. You start making decisions based on this phantom wealth. You take out a home equity line of credit to buy a German SUV with leather interior and a turbo engine that depreciates faster than a lead balloon sinking through the ocean. You spend money you haven't earned, backed by wealth that only exists if you sell your house and move into a tent. You upgrade to premium gasoline. You buy artisanal coffee. You feel like you've transcended the middle class. You feel like you're winning. But when Mr. Market falls into his dark depression, when he turns cold and bitter, when the neighborhood declines due to demographic shifts, or the interest rates spike, or a recession hits, and suddenly nobody wants to buy, he turns on you with cruelty. He tells you your house is worth 30% less than the mortgage you owe. Suddenly, your fortress is an underwater tomb. Your wealth has evaporated. The SUV is still there, still depreciating. The premium gasoline in the tank reminds you of a time when you felt rich. We suffer from sunk cost fallacy, that profound cognitive distortion that affects even intelligent people. We spend $50,000 on a finished basement, custom carpeting, soundproofing, a built-in bar that you use twice a year, and we truly, deeply believe we have added value to the house. We haven't added value. We have merely customized our cage to our specific tastes, making it exponentially harder to sell to anyone else. We are blinded by the dopamine loop of ownership. We are intoxicated by the feeling of being kings of our 0.25-acre castles. But consider the math of the king. A king has to maintain the castle. A king has to defend the castle. A king is trapped by the castle. If a plague comes, if a recession comes, if a pandemic comes, if the economy shifts in some way the king didn't anticipate, the king stays and dies with his bricks. He is tied to the land, just as his peasants were tied to the land centuries ago. The merchant, by contrast, the investor, the liquid man, the person who keeps his capital mobile and his options open, he moves. He doesn't ask permission. He doesn't have to renovate. He doesn't have to wait for the market to recover. He simply follows the capital. He follows the opportunity. He is a citizen of the world, while the homeowner is a prisoner of his zip code. The speculator's delusion is the belief that because you live in it, because it's your primary residence, because it has emotional significance to you, it must be valuable as an investment. It is a form of narcissism. It is the belief that your choice of granite countertops is a hedge against inflation. It isn't. It's a consumption choice. It's an aesthetic preference dressed up as financial sophistication. And until we can psychologically separate consumption from investment, until we can admit that a house is shelter, and shelter is a utility, not an asset class, we are just children playing with very expensive blocks, pretending they understand the game. I see you right now on your laptop at night, searching the real estate listings in the dark, looking for potential. You aren't looking for an investment. I know what you're actually doing. You're looking for a place to hide from the volatility of the world. But here's the truth. The world is always volatile. Volatility is not a bug in the system. It's the system. The only true security, the only real fortress, is a liquid balance sheet and a mind that isn't clouded by the scent of fresh-mown grass or the fantasy of standing on your own land. Mr. Market is the real estate agent in the cheap suit, promising you that now is the best time to buy. He's been saying this for 30 years. It is almost never the best time for you to surrender your freedom.
Now we put away the emotions. We put away the hope and the dreams and the fantasies of suburban happiness. We take out the scalpel. We take out the spreadsheet. Let's perform the audit. Let's look at the decoding, the cold, brutal mathematics that nobody wants to discuss at cocktail parties. If you buy a house for $500,000 in 2026 with a 7% interest rate, a standard, safe mortgage, the kind that the bank assures you is a good deal, do you know what you actually pay over 30 years? Go ahead and grab a calculator. Go ahead and run the numbers yourself, because I want you to feel this in your bones. You don't pay $500,000. You pay over $1.1 million. $1.1 million. The bank is the silent partner in your home. Actually, they're not silent at all. They're screaming for their money every single month, and they are taking the lion's share of your life's work. For the first 15 years, your monthly payment of approximately $3,325 is almost entirely interest. Almost every single dollar is going to the bank, not to you. You are paying the bank for the privilege of owning a house that they actually own. You are the bank's tenant with extra steps. You are a glorified tenant of the bank, but with one crucial difference. You have to pay for the plumbing. You have to deal with the burst pipe at midnight. You have to climb into the attic and deal with the squirrels. Let's talk about the 1% rule, the maintenance cost that every property owner dreads. A house requires roughly 1% of its value in maintenance every single year, not some years, every year, just to keep it from gradually decomposing, crumbling, rotting from the inside out. On a $500,000 home, that's $5,000 a year, forever. You do this until you sell it or die. Then add property taxes, another 1.2% of the value annually, another $6,000. Then homeowners insurance, because the bank requires it. Remember, they actually own your house. Another $2,000. We are already at $13,000 in carrying costs, just baseline costs to keep the thing from falling apart before you have even turned on the lights or bought a loaf of bread or paid a single utility bill. That's $13,000 per year in pure maintenance and taxes and insurance. That's $156,000 over 12 years. That's $390,000 over 30 years. That's nearly the price of the down payment, gone, evaporated, providing no return except the prevention of catastrophic failure. But my house appreciated, I hear you cry. I see the Zillow estimate. I see what the neighborhood houses sold for. Let's look at the historical numbers, the real numbers, adjusted for inflation so we're comparing apples to apples. Historically, over the long term, over decades of data, residential real estate appreciates at about 1 to 3% per year. Some years it's higher, some years it's negative, but on average, in real terms, inflation-adjusted terms, it's 1 to 3%. Now let's look at the S&P 500, an index of the 500 largest companies in America. With dividends reinvested, the S&P 500 has historically returned approximately 10% per year. Let me repeat that. Let me make sure this sinks in. Housing, 1 to 3% per year after inflation. Stock market, 10% per year after inflation. Now let's run a scenario. You take a $100,000 down payment, money you've saved, money you've sacrificed for, money that represents your sweat and your discipline. You can do one of two things. Option 1, put it into a house. You make a down payment and you own a home. In 30 years, assuming a 2% average appreciation rate, being generous, that $100,000 in equity might be worth $180,000 in today's dollars. You've made $80,000 over 30 years. That's $2,667 per year. But remember, you've also paid $156,000 in taxes and insurance, $150,000 in maintenance, and you've paid the bank $600,000 in interest. Your net position? You're underwater.
You've paid $906,000 to turn your $100,000 into $180,000. Your actual return on investment is negative when you factor in all costs. Option 2. You rent a modest apartment for $1,500 a month, a nice apartment, a safe neighborhood, good schools nearby, and you take that $100,000 and put it into a low-cost index fund and let it compound while you sleep. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to maintain anything. You just let the algorithm of capitalism work for you. In 30 years, assuming a 10% average return, the historical average, that $100,000 becomes $1.74 million. You've made $1.64 million over 30 years. You've paid $540,000 in rent. Your net gain is $1.1 million. The cost of your house isn't just the mortgage. It's the $1.3 million. No, let me recalculate. It's the $900,000 plus you didn't make because your capital was trapped, physically locked in a bathroom remodel and a new HVAC system and property taxes and insurance and maintenance fees. It is the opportunity cost, the invisible thief that steals the provider's legacy while they're not looking, while they're at the hardware store on a Saturday morning. This is why Benjamin Graham said it. An investment operation is one which upon thorough analysis promises safety of principal and an adequate return. A primary residence fails this test. It fails spectacularly. Your principal, the money you've invested, is subject to the local job market, the neighbor's barking dog, and the whims of the local zoning board. If they decide to put a highway on-ramp next to your property, your investment just lost 40% of its value. If the local school district loses accreditation, your investment tanks. If the neighborhood gentrifies, your investment rises, but so does your property tax. You are not in control. You are not safe. And your return? Your return is negative when you factor in the thousands of hours you've spent mowing the lawn, the thousands of dollars you've spent on a new HVAC system, the weekends lost to repairs and maintenance, and the psychological burden of ownership. You are not an investor. You are a consumer of shelter services, and that is completely fine. I want to be clear on this point. Being a consumer is not a moral failing, but don't tell me it's a smart financial move. It is a luxury. It is a lifestyle choice. It's absolutely a choice you can make if that's what you value, but call it what it is. In 2026, when capital is scarce and opportunities are fleeting, luxuries are expensive. The math is clear, crystal clear, undeniable. The house is a hole in the ground into which you pour your most precious resource, your time.
There is a specific sickness I see in the modern speculator, and I want to be careful here, because I'm not talking about all homeowners, but about a particular type of homeowner. I see them at the cocktail parties in the trendy neighborhoods, eyes gleaming with a kind of manic energy, talking about their equity like they've discovered a perpetual motion machine. They treat their homes like a slot machine that only pays out, like the house market is a one-way escalator to wealth and security. They look down on the renter with something close to pity. They see the renter, the man who keeps his capital liquid, who maintains his flexibility, who refuses to be chained to a mortgage, as a failure, as a loser, as someone who hasn't made it, as someone who is throwing money away. What a pathetic inversion of reality.
What a profound misunderstanding of the fundamentals of wealth and freedom. The speculator is a slave to status. He doesn't buy the McMansion because he needs 6 bedrooms. His family will use perhaps 2 of them regularly. He buys the McMansion because he needs his neighbors to know he can afford the debt for 6 bedrooms. He is a status seeker masquerading as a provider. He is playing a game of musical chairs where the music is compound interest and the seats keep disappearing. He fills his house with things designed to demonstrate his position in the social hierarchy. Smart refrigerators that tell him he's out of milk so he can buy more milk. Theater rooms he never uses, gathering dust while Netflix streams to a television he bought on credit. Curated gardens that require a small army of landscapers to maintain every Saturday, costing $3,000 a month just to keep the grass the right shade of green. He is a man building a monument to his own ego on a foundation of sand, or worse, on a foundation of debt. When he walks through his house, he's not experiencing peace, he's experiencing confirmation. Confirmation that the world sees him the way he wants to be seen. That is the addiction. That is what keeps him locked in the cage. He is trapped by his own choices, even as those choices were presented to him as the path to freedom. Now contrast this with the investor's discipline. The truly intelligent investor views shelter, housing, accommodation, a roof over his head, as a utility. He views it the same way he views electricity or water. It's a service. He asks himself one simple question: what is the minimum I can spend to provide safety and comfort for my family, so that the rest of my capital can be deployed in the service of growth? What is the minimum I need to spend on housing so that I can maximize my ability to invest and compound? He doesn't care about the prestige of the zip code. He doesn't care if his neighbors drive BMWs and he drives a Honda. He doesn't care if his house is smaller or less fashionable. He cares about one thing and one thing only: the intrinsic value of his freedom. He cares about maintaining optionality. He cares about keeping the doors open. The speculator is paralyzed. If a better job opens up 3 states away, a job that would double his salary, expand his opportunities, accelerate his career, he can't move. He has to wait for the right time to sell. He has to negotiate with the market. He has to fix the cracks in the driveway before showing the house. He has to paint. He has to stage. He has to compromise and negotiate with people who aren't his family. He is tethered. He is a peasant tied to the land, while the bank plays the role of the feudal lord, collecting rent in the form of mortgage payments. And the sarcasm, oh, the sarcasm I have for those who flip houses, who position themselves as entrepreneurs and real estate moguls. They think they are creators of value. They think they are building something. They take a 50-year-old house, put a coat of gray paint on a rotting structure, install a cheap light fixture from a big box store, stage it with furniture from a rental company, and call it value creation. They are not creators. They are parasites on a bubble. They are living organisms feeding on the desperation of first-time homebuyers. They rely entirely on the greater fool theory, the hope, the prayer that someone more desperate and less mathematically literate will come along and buy their polished turd for 20% more than they paid. And for a while, it works. For a while, there are greater fools. The system feeds on perpetual growth, but mathematics cannot be fooled forever. In 2026, the greater fools are running out. The demographic cliff is real and undeniable. The population is aging. The birth rates are below replacement. The demand for massive suburban boxes, 4-bedroom, 2-bath structures designed for families of 5 in a time when families are shrinking, the demand is dying. It's not a temporary decline, it's a structural shift. The speculator who thinks he is building wealth by accumulating properties is actually just building a very expensive anchor. He is a man who buys a boat in a drought and wonders why he isn't moving. He has misread the historical moment. He has bet on the wrong horse, and the horse is about to stop running. The truly moral act of a provider, and I want to be clear about this, is not to provide a house. Any person can provide a house. A house is just a building. The truly moral act of a provider is to provide security, real security. And security doesn't come from buildings. Security comes from assets that pay you, not assets that you pay for. It comes from diversified income streams, from compound growth, from optionality. If your wealth requires you to work 40 hours a week just to keep the lights on in a building you don't even fully own, a building that the bank has a lien against, a building that's subject to property taxes that increase every year, you aren't wealthy. You are just a high-end janitor for your own life. You are working for the bank. You are in servitude. That isn't security. That isn't the legacy of a thinking man.
So, what is the reality of 2026? How do we apply this brutal rationality to a world of high interest rates, fluctuating markets, and demographic uncertainty? We must fundamentally stop looking at our lives through the lens of home ownership and start looking through the lens of structural integrity. What does structural integrity mean? It means asking, if everything collapses, if the worst happens, if the economy shifts and my job disappears and the world turns upside down, will I and my family still be standing? That is structural integrity. That is the fortress we should be building. First, we must embrace the rental fortress. In 2026, renting is not throwing money away. This is the single most important mental shift a rational person can make. Renting is buying flexibility. This is the thesis we need to build our lives around. When you rent, your housing cost is fixed. Your maximum cost is known. When you own, your mortgage is merely the minimum you will pay. It is the beginning of the expenses, not the end. The moment you sign the mortgage, you are committing to 30 years of surprise costs. A new roof costs $15,000. A failed foundation costs $40,000. HVAC systems fail. Plumbing fails. Electrical systems fail. I want you to take the difference, the money you save on taxes, on maintenance, on interest, and I want you to weaponize it. I want you to take that $500 a month difference, and I want you to turn it into a weapon against poverty. I want you to let it compound. Invest in the engine of humanity. Buy the companies that provide the world with energy, food, and technology. Buy Microsoft. Buy Johnson & Johnson. Buy the companies that are making the world work. These are companies with pricing power. These are companies that can pass inflation through to consumers. These are companies with sustainable competitive advantages. More specifically, buy the REITs, the real estate investment trusts.
Yes, you've heard me criticize individual home ownership, but REIT ownership is different. A REIT allows you to own a piece of 1,000 commercial buildings, hospitals, data centers, shopping centers, without ever having to pick up a wrench, without ever having to deal with a tenant, without ever having to fix a leak. These are professionally managed portfolios of real estate that distribute cash flow to shareholders. They produce income. They are structural repairs for a broken financial life. You get exposure to real estate, if you believe in real estate as an investment, without the burden of ownership. If you must buy a house, if your family truly needs the physical roots of an owned space, if you have deep cultural or emotional reasons for ownership, if you're planning to stay in a location for a minimum of 10 years, then you must audit it like a cold-blooded vulture. You must approach it with the mindset of a forensic accountant. Do not buy the dream home. Buy the financial floor. Introduce the 25% rule into your decision-making. Your total housing cost, and I mean total, including mortgage, property tax, insurance, and maintenance reserves, must not exceed 25% of your take-home pay on a 15-year fixed mortgage, not a 30-year mortgage, 15 years. This is the only way to avoid debt servitude. If you can't afford it, then mathematically, genuinely, you cannot afford the house. You are just pretending. You are engaging in magical thinking. You are lying to yourself. Next, perform the audit of locality. This is critical. Do not buy where it feels good. Buy only where the math screams at you. Look for the neighborhoods that are distressed debt opportunities, not distressed charm. Look for places where job market growth is projected to exceed national averages. Population demographic trends are favorable, not aging, but young families moving in. School district is improving, not declining. Local government isn't in fiscal crisis. Property taxes are stable or declining. The neighborhood hasn't been artificially inflated by speculation. This is hard work. This is not romantic. This is mathematical. But it's the only way to do it. Embrace the frugality of the provider. Treat your home like a machine, not like a canvas for self-expression. If a repair doesn't increase the safety or basic function of the house, don't do it. The neighborhood doesn't care about your heated marble floors. The bank certainly doesn't care. Your resale value won't be significantly higher because you renovated the kitchen. Avoid vanity upgrades at all costs. Paint is cheap. Counters are expensive. Avoid being the person who spent $30,000 on a kitchen remodel only to sell the house for 5% more because of it. In 2026, the world rewards the mobile, the hybrid worker who can take a job in a different state without losing his housing, the digital nomad who can relocate with a laptop and an internet connection, the investor who can move his capital with a click of a button. These are the people who will survive and thrive during the coming shifts. These are the people who will adapt. The man who is house poor, the man who is one broken water main away from insolvency, who can't afford to take a risk because all his capital is locked in a mortgage, is a man who has failed his primary duty as a provider. He has reduced his own optionality. He has volunteered for servitude. Your fortress is not made of wood and nails. Your fortress is not made of bricks and mortar. Your fortress is made of liquidity. It is made of margin of safety. It is the ability to look a bad boss in the eye and say no to a demeaning project or an immoral request because you have 3 years of expenses, 36 months of living expenses, sitting in a money market fund earning 5%. That is a fortress. A 3,000 square foot house with a 90% loan-to-value ratio, a house that the bank has a 90% claim on, is just a very pretty prison. It is a gilded cage. It is security theater.
We come now to the end of our audit. We have looked at the math, the psychology, and the brutal reality of the cage we've built for ourselves. We have deconstructed the mythology. We have exposed the machinery. But what is the purpose of it all? Why do I speak with such brutal rationality? Why do I sound, perhaps, like I'm attacking something that people hold sacred? It is because I care about the legacy. When I am gone, and I will be gone, and you will be gone, and all of us will eventually pass from this earth, I don't want my children to remember me as the man who spent every weekend at Home Depot, every Saturday morning at Lowe's, accumulating supplies for the next renovation. I don't want my legacy to be a pile of bricks and sticks that they have to sell and fight over with the rest of my estate. I don't want my final gift to them to be a disputed property and a mortgage they have to refinance and property taxes they have to pay. I want my legacy to be the freedom I provided for them. I want my legacy to be the financial security that comes from compound growth and diversification. I want them to inherit optionality. I want them to inherit the ability to say no to anything they don't believe in. True peace, and I want you to really hear this, because this is the core of everything. True peace is not found in ownership. It is found in stewardship. It is found in the knowledge that you have done your duty. We are all just passing through this life. We are all temporary custodians of whatever we accumulate. We are all renters of our time on this earth. We are renting our bodies, our minds, our lives from the universe, from God, from entropy. The idea that we can own a piece of the planet, that we can stake a permanent claim on a square of earth, is a vanity that vanishes the moment our hearts stop beating. 6 feet of earth covers us all equally. The Sentinel's resolve is the commitment to truth over comfort. It is the willingness to look at the American dream, look it square in the eye, and say, this does not serve my family's long-term security. This narrative is designed to serve creditors, not families. This system is designed to keep me working, not to set me free. It is the discipline to live in a smaller space so that your soul, your actual life, can have more room to breathe. It is the willingness to be countercultural, to do what the math says instead of what the neighbors do. I see the peace in the eyes of the man who has fulfilled his duty. He isn't the man with the biggest house on the block. He is the man who is unburdened. He can look his family in the eye and know that if the world turns upside down tomorrow, if there's a recession, if he loses his job, if the economy collapses, they are safe. Not because they have a roof over their heads. You can always find a roof. You can always find a place to sleep. but because they have the resources to adapt. They have the capital to relocate. They have the security to take time finding a new opportunity instead of panicking. The home ownership trap is a trap of the spirit as much as it is a trap of the wallet. It makes us small. It makes us fearful. It makes us territorial and defensive. It makes us slaves to the opinions of the neighborhood association. But the intelligent investor is a citizen of the world. He is not imprisoned by zip codes. His wealth is in his mind, his discipline, and his diversified ledger. His wealth is in the knowledge he carries. As the sun sets on 2026, a year of high interest rates, demographic uncertainty, and technological upheaval, ask yourself these questions in the privacy of your own mind. Are you building a fortress, or are you just decorating your cell? Do you own your home, or does your home own you? Are you investing, or are you consuming? Are you serving your family's security, or are you serving the bank's quarterly earnings? Audit your life. Perform the moral inversion. Stop being a speculator in the garden of debt, hoping that someone else will pay more for your asset than you did. Become the sentinel of your own destiny. Become the guardian of your family's actual security. The duty is yours. The math is ready, sitting in front of you, waiting to be read. The freedom is waiting on the other side of the decision. The choice, as always, is the only thing you truly own.
In the end, this is not an argument against housing. This is an argument for clarity. This is an argument for separating the consumption choice, I want a nice place to live, from the investment claim, my house will make me rich. One is honest, the other is mythology. The intelligent provider knows the difference. He knows that his house is a liability he can afford. He knows that his wealth is built elsewhere. He knows that his fortress is made of dollars, not drywall. He knows that his children's security rests not on property lines, but on his discipline and his refusal to surrender his options. That is the resolution. That is the answer. The rest is just noise.